Hello, everyone. I wanted to introduce you to Ean Seeb. Ean Seeb is currently the special advisor to Governor Polis in Colorado. Prior to that, Ean was the very successful owner of co-owner of Denver Relief, and he's also the two-time chairman of the National Cannabis Industry Association, along with many other accolades. So, Ean, I want to thank you for coming along. It's been a long time. I know we haven't seen each other in a while, so I appreciate it. I just want to jump right in. So first thing is just kind of tell us about your early days of Colorado and kind of your journey into the cannabis space that you've been in over a decade, correct?
That's correct. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to see you. Pleasure to catch up a little bit before we started chatting. How did I get started? I got started as a teenager going to protest rallies on the steps of the Capitol, skipping things that I should have been doing after school activities and going to rallies and on weekends. I became a patient in 2008. I've had several accidents over my life, personal physical accidents that enabled me to become a medical marijuana patient in 2008. And I recognized at the time that there was an opportunity that not very many people understood what being a medical cannabis patient in Colorado meant, nor how they went about becoming one. And so I became a patient and realized that I could help other people become patients. At the same time that I could do that, I could become their caregiver and also provide them medical cannabis. So for every additional patient that I had, I could possess more product and was able to start legally selling marijuana to cannabis patients in Colorado. That's how I met my business partners. As you know, Kayvon and Nick, we all threw in $2,000 or a half a pound a pot on the cultivation side. And we started Denver Relief with $4,000 and a half a pound of marijuana as a delivery service prior to any regulations being created that either expressly prohibited or permitted sale and distribution through stores. It was before the Cole memo had been released, before the Ogden memo had come out, just months before. And that's really how we got started, Pat.
That's great. That's awesome. So you guys have been down Denver Relief. Obviously, you had your dispensary is at 1 Broadway. I remember it very, very well. Was that the first dispensary in Denver? Or no, not the first. Is that the first dispensary now?
We like to say that it was the oldest licensed dispensary in Denver. It definitely was one of the oldest. Yeah. It was the only one at the very heart of Denver. 1 Broadway is literally the 0-100 block, both north-south and east-west in Denver. And so we would say that it was, the epicenter, and it really was the epicenter of cannabis regulation around the world, in the city, in the state, in the country. If you looked at it from a macro view, you could all hone down into 1 Broadway.
Yeah, I remember driving there for sure. You didn't have to drive very far to go have many meetings, that's for sure. So, as you said, you've been in the business for a long time now, since 2008, so it's a very long time. You've transitioned over, obviously, to the government side, working with Governor Polis. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that role and what your position is currently?
Now I'm the special advisor on cannabis to Governor Jared Polis. I go up the same steps that I used to protest on as a teenager and get to help others, a large team, help shape policies to further cannabis regulation in Colorado that hopefully will propagate to other states and ideally around the world. It's been fascinating, and one of the things that's interesting is one of the largest challenges facing the cannabis industry is their inability to have access to banking. And my relationship with Governor, then Congressman Polis, began as a result of speaking with he and his team about the challenges that we faced with our inability to have access to banking. And he wrote a letter to my bank in 2013, 4 years after our business had been running safely, successfully, and legally with the same bank account. We got a letter saying that due to recent federal pronouncements, they were going to have to close our account down. And I reached out to Congressman Polis, and he put himself out there and offered to connect bank executives with Department of Treasury and Department of Justice officials. And it ended, we still had our bank account shuttered in the end, but it allowed us several additional months of having service with that bank while we went out to find another solution. And so that, that began the relationship that we now have today.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. So, you talked about, obviously your early days in getting in the space and from a business owner activist, if you will, a patient activist, now obviously being on the other side, if you will, how much different is it? How do you kind of handle yourself? What are how do you look at the issues differently? Anything you can kind of shed some light on?
Well, it's obviously much different. I'm no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of any businesses. I'm looking at it from a side of helping shape and shift policies, as we were talking about. It's a whole nother perspective. It's definitely eye-opening, and I realize that it's not one side versus the other, and that operators are not on the other side of from government employees, and there's an opportunity to work together. And I think the Marijuana Enforcement Division recognizes that in order for them to be successful, their clients need to be successful, who are the operators. And there's definitely a holistic relationship that takes place between government and business that I don't know that I fully appreciated when I was more on the business side. But really, it's eye-opening, and it allows to see things from a different perspective and from a different lens, while still, eye on focusing on progressing cannabis, period.
Perfect. Which brings us to our next question. What are some of the biggest priorities for Governor Polis as you guys look forward in the state of Colorado, that is?
Related to cannabis, there's a lot of them. It's a great question. We have a lot of different priorities that we're working on. As you know, we had a town hall last week that you participated in, and that's through our Department of Regulatory Agencies. They have what we call wildly important goals, and theirs is to increase banking and financial services for the industry. We know that continues to be a challenge, and so we have made it a state goal and a state priority to decrease the number of businesses that don't have access, not only to depository services, but things like insurance and other financial services as well. The Marijuana Enforcement Division is focused on increasing diversity in the marijuana industry. We're focused on social equity and expungements. The last bill that passed through our legislative body in the last session this past year was a social equity bill that defined social equity applicants, that decreased the number of years that somebody would be prevented from participating in the industry. We added at the last minute, there was a large pardon provision added that gave the governor permission to pardon marijuana possession crimes. He ended up pardoning 2,732 previous marijuana convictions in October of this past year. We're continuing to work on social equity. A third priority for us is to increase Colorado's hemp producers' commodity market share through increased business partnerships. So we're working with our markets division and the Office of Economic Development, International Trade to really proactively try to create opportunities for Colorado's hemp community, whether you're on the cultivation side or processing. We know that CBD is obviously a big market, but there's another 60,000, or as I say it, 59,999 uses beyond CBD for hemp. And so the ability to focus on industrial hemp opportunities for the state of Colorado is something that we really want to be able to take advantage of. And then our last formal WIG or priority is to increase the number of applications for the Environmental Leadership Program, which is a program at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment that allows people to create their own sustainable business practices, allows them to create their own sustainable business practices, and or really create their own program that contributes to a better environment and sustainable practices, things that are more environmentally friendly. And so working with the state, they have the ability to create and design and track different uses of resources. And through that, they can seek membership into the Environmental Leadership Program, as I was saying, which is only for the past couple of years permitted marijuana businesses to be a part of it. And so we have both marijuana and hemp businesses participating. And our goal is to see more people apply to that over the next year. So that's really our main 4 priorities that we're working on between now and the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of June of 2021.
That's great. I appreciate that. The town hall last week was wonderful. I thought that the materials that the state put together, I recommend anyone go out there and get it. It's online, and I think it's at Dora's website. I forget what it's called, but they had a wonderful download that was just great with all kinds of good stats and all across the country. And we've used it ourselves a couple of times here and shared it internally with some of the good information that came out of it. I wish you luck on your priorities. That's for sure. So, as we kind of come to our last question, we ask is, obviously new change in administration at the federal level. Obviously the feds have been driving a lot of stuff. Colorado's clearly been a leader for a very long time in the cannabis space. And as you look nationally, what are some of the biggest challenges out there nationally for us to really kind of move forward as an industry?
Obviously, it goes without saying, 280E and banking remain 2 of the largest challenges. Punitive taxes levied against the industry and the inability to even deposit money, that needs to change. But that, I think, is coming. What happens next is the fact that I think it's inevitable that marijuana will be legalized sometime in the next 5-ish years. And at that point, there's going to be conversations. What happens on the federal level? Who's going to regulate? What's that going to look like? Right now, every state that has either medical or adult use has a different set of regulations. And so there's a patchwork of state by state regulations. Is that something that's going to continue? Are there going to be federal regulations? Will it be left to the states? Is it going to look more like liquor? And the fact that each state has the ability to kind of make their own rules and regulations as to how everything works. How will it work for interstate commerce? How will one product that's manufactured in one state be sold over state lines? What will the packaging and labeling look like? What will the potency limitations be like? So the ability to have a conversation about removing some of that patchwork of state by state regulations and putting at least a high level overview of what's going to be an even playing field, if you will, is going to come up. Right now, you think of all the different multi-state operators or manufacturers, product manufacturers that are manufacturing and, set up in 13 different states. Well, they have to have 13 different processing and manufacturing facilities because you can't send those products over state lines. And so economies of scale and the ability to set up full life cycle product chains. The conversation around industrial hemp is also going to be one of the largest challenges. How we return domestic hemp production to the United States. I think the opportunities before us that are here and the myriad of uses that's available for the industrial hemp for hemp as a plant, and really seeing forward and recognize all the opportunities that are ahead are really exciting and challenging at the same time.
Well, Ian, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for all the time. With that, I will bid you adieu, and we'll Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to spend a few minutes with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks again, Ian.